You sent me letters about buying my property. Now you're calling me. Stop sending those fucking letters. My name is Dan Weber. I'm at 39 Southwest Alfred. Stop sending those fucking letters. I'm not selling my property. Bye.
I've paid thousands of dollars in courses to learn what you're basically teaching on your podcast for free. What you're putting out there is so valuable. So, I just really want to acknowledge you, and I definitely send everyone to your podcast.
You were virtually one of the first mentors that I looked up to and started following. You're always one step ahead of the game. So I just wanted to give you kudos and props for that, because lots of people are watching, lots of people are learning from it.
Tucker and the whole TTM crew, Dan and Chris, thanks so much for your support. I love what you guys do, and a huge, huge fan. Having this support's huge, so I'm grateful for that.
What's up, everybody out there in listener land? It's episode 280, and this is the Real Dealz podcast. And as always, I am your host, Tucker Merrihew. I want to thank you guys for joining me for what is another great episode. Hey, last week's show, it was a big hit, guys. You liked it. I brought on my better half, kind of talked about what the construction management and more kind of the design part of the business, because I brought Steve on, my co-host of the local show, to ask a lot of the questions. We focused a lot on design. We didn't get too much into the construction management, project management side of the business, but even with that not being the case, it was a hit. You guys loved the show, and we had a lot of people reach out, not only to me, but also to Joni, and just tell her that they really appreciated her point of view and just the information that she shared. So I'm glad I brought her on the show. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. And we might try and do more shows like that as we head forward, maybe dive into a little more of the actual construction management, project management side of the business, which, it's not the sexiest side of the business, because it's mainly just about dealing with problems and keeping costs in line and scheduling and all that stuff, but very important nonetheless. So if you have not checked out last week's show, make sure you go do it. Now, with that said, moving forward into 2020, because we're basically in Q4 of 2019 here, which is crazy to think about. It's raining here this week. Summer took an abrupt end here in Portland, which is unfortunate. We kind of pulled the e-brake, and can't say that I'm too happy about it. I was hoping for a nice soft landing through September here with some nice sunshine. Maybe not as hot, but it's not working out that way right now. But anyway, looking forward into 2020, I think what we are going to do, I'm kicking around this idea right now, and a lot of times, the ideas don't make it past just the idea stage, but this one will actually move forward. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to host more than likely a couple events next year. And the reason that I want to host these events is because we want to put some education out there that is nowhere to be found in our space, or at least it can't be found in any sort of quality manner. At least I don't think so anyway. And the reason being is because a lot of the real estate investor space is geared around finding deals, which is incredibly important. Marketing, finding deals, and then simply leaning on a contractor to do the work and get your projects done. And that works for a lot of business models, but at the end of the day, there's a big void in just education, understanding, which then breeds confidence, right, in your running your business. But there's a big void in the education and the understanding and the how-to in the construction management, project management, and design side of the business. It's why, when I look on Facebook, there's a lot of people that post their finished projects, and they're so proud of them. And it's great that they finish the projects, but to be honest with you, you look at them and the design is horrible. Now, a lot of times the price points in the areas, your buyers aren't going to recognize that. You won't get punished for it. We're in a hotter market, so market carries you, price points carry you, but you're picking horrible things. It's the reality of what it is. And more than likely, a lot of people out there probably don't have any idea what goes into actually renovating our house, or what you need to do or not do at different price points, and just don't have any real conception of, what they should put in a house design-wise. So it's not a knock on anybody by any means, because I've been in that same boat. But what it is an opportunity to really provide some quality education to everybody to try and get them to be able to run their business a lot more like we run ours, which it's a real tight ship when it comes to the project management side of the business, the construction management, which are somewhat the same thing, right? We are our own GC, but if you're not your own GC, you still have to project manage your GC, and you also have to layer in design as well, right? You cannot rely on your GC to be your designer. If you are, I would advise you stay in the very, very entry-level price points, or you stop renovating houses as soon as the market gets slower, because you're going to get into some trouble, that's for sure. So what I think we're going to do is, it's a long-winded story, but what we're going to do is set up a couple events next year that are all about training you how to be an expert project manager if you hire GCs to run the majority of your job, or be an expert construction manager if you GC a lot of your own jobs, and then also layer in a lot of very good design ideas and tips that you can utilize without hiring a designer yourself in order to try and get them to work with you or your GC. Now, you can obviously do that, but we want to go over a bunch of really good information on design tips, trends, strategies, things that you should do, what's warranted in different price points, and then of course with the construction management side, what subs go in which order, what kind of pricing you're looking at, who you should be hiring. And that way, if you're running your own jobs, you know this, but if you're running a GC, you know whether or not they're doing their job right or wrong. And so I think there's a big void in this space, and I think we want to tackle it, and we want to help you guys run a better business. Because the reality is as we head into a slower market, which inevitably we will, if you do not have the ability to retail houses in a very effective way, your business is going to take a hit. There's no question. These large wholesale operations, as soon as the market, hits the skids or slows down, one of the two, it'll probably just slow down. But as soon as it slows down, that means buyers are going to slow down, and they're going to want much fatter spreads in order to take the risk. And if you don't have the ability to take down a deal yourself and retail it in a manner that makes it highly desirable for a retail buyer, you could be in some trouble. So that's where we're going to start these events. So keep your ears open. I'll let everybody know, but sometime we'll probably host a couple of them next year. That's we'll see how they go. We'll host the first one, and then we'll see from there. But that's a long-winded story of what we got going on for next year, but I'm excited about it, as you can tell. Now, this week's show. This is a great show. It's one that I've wanted to get on the books for a while now. So there's a meetup in town here, and it's called RareBird, and there's also a brokerage attached to it. They've got a number of different facets to their business, but locally we have REA, and it's, as far as people that show up and just the type of clientele that are members, and the meetings that happen, it's not a knock on it, but it doesn't have a ton of steam, right? It's not a big mecca for quality investors to go show up. And so the RareBird guys have built what I think is the best meetup in Portland. It just is. And their numbers, they rival the meetup of the Fixated guys that we do a lot of stuff with up in the Seattle area and Tacoma now. And so they're doing amazing things. And so what I wanted to do, and I've mentioned on previous shows, is I wanted to put my support behind these guys, because originally we thought about having a meetup, but I just don't have the time. Can't make it happen. So I wanted to kind of get behind these guys, help them out the best that I could. And in doing so, they also asked me to be the headline speaker for their big event, which is in October. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to get behind you guys and try and bring as much awareness to your guys' meetup as possible. Let's have you on the show. Let's talk about what you've got going on. Let's talk about the different facets of your business. Let's talk about how RareBird started. And, I don't have anything to gain from putting these guys on the show. The only thing potentially I have to gain is that if you're local here, maybe you come and see me on October 10th and you can hear me talk about direct seller marketing to everybody that comes to that big meetup. And, maybe we have a conversation. Maybe you start listening to the podcast. I don't know. That's about it. So I don't really have an agenda other than the fact that I'm just trying to really foster along the meetup, group here in Portland, and just the meetup scene in general, and try and make it bigger and better, and just make it more educational and better for everybody here that's an investor. So this week's show, I've got Mike and Tyler from RareBird on. Two great guys that I've known for a while, but they've been around since, the olden days, we'll call it, the real estate crash days. And we got a lot of good stories that we've swapped about that as well. So October 10th is the day that I'll be speaking at their event, and we go into all the details on it on this week's show. So stay tuned for that. Now, before we get into that, housekeeping items real quick. I know I'm talking a lot here on the intro, but I'll try and rattle through these as quick as I can. Number one is our Deal Finders Academy. For those of you guys that know, you know. If you don't know, it's our online mastermind group. It's been around for 5+ years. And we would love to add some more of you guys that are listeners and turn you into members of our group. So with that group, obviously it's on-demand support, being that it's an online mastermind group. There's no cost for travel, although we like to have an event once a year. This year's event got pushed due to some personal stuff and just the amount of stuff that we have going on. But generally we have an event once a year that you can come to. You don't have to. So there's no travel. You get on-demand support from everybody, about 120 plus people in the group on a daily basis. I do weekly Facebook Lives, or most weeks anyway, where I tackle a bunch of different questions. I'm available to answer any questions that you guys have on the spot. You can put me on the spot, or I just have a bunch of topics prepared, and we have an ongoing conversation. There's a whole ton of online marketing secrets, seller negotiation secrets, and just a ton of support. So if you're interested in joining, and the best part is it's only $199 a month. So it costs about as much to be a member for that group or our group as it does to go to one in-person mastermind event per quarter. So there you go, right? So you can layer it on top. You can be a part of other groups, but we know you'll get at least 10 times the value out of being a member of the group on any given year, no question, and probably a heck of a lot more than that. So go to thedealfindersacademy.com, go to the show notes page, click on that, book a call with Dan. We'll talk with you, and if we've got room in your market, we would love to admit you. Now, the other thing I want to mention is our Driving for Dollars app. We are in the process of putting out the drive tracking function. You guys asked for it, so we're spending the money and we're doing it. So it should be out here very shortly, but basically it'll track everywhere that you drive. We also have the unlimited list building tier out there right now. So it just basically builds lists of properties that you can have your drivers, your Uber drivers, people on your team, as many of them as you want, going around and just creating lists, and then you can skip trace those lists outside of the app. But it's only $20 a month to be able to use that tool. So unbelievable value. Definitely a better value than all of our competition, no question. It's not a knock on them, it's just the way that we priced it. But at the same time, we've got a bunch of other features coming along, and one of them is the drive tracking function. So go make sure you download it. It's the Driving for Dollars app. We've trademarked the phrase. It's the only one that can be called out in the iTunes Store or the Google Play Store. You get a 5-property free trial if you sign up, and from there, the lowest price tier is only $20 a month. So there you go, right? So go check it out. Now, what's up with me and TTM over the course of the past week? Well, quite a bit, as I mentioned on last week's show as well. We got a flurry of deals going on right now and leads. We've got a wholesale deal that we're putting out this week that should wrap up. We've got another one that we put under contract in Lake Oswego that if any of you guys are following me on Facebook, you saw that I posted. We pulled the septic system apart last week to see what was going on, and it was probably the most disgusting septic tank I think I've ever seen. So we've got our work cut out for us on this property, but it'll be a really cool ranch. It's in an affordable, we'll say, quote-unquote affordable part of Lake Oswego, so it should sell very easily once we're done with it. And we got a bunch of other stuff going on as well. So it's gangbusters right now. Oh, and I had a water line blow this weekend actually while I was on my way to, I was going to have a nice Saturday morning, go play a little hoops. We got a call from our painter, and he said, guess what? There's water spewing out all over the front of this house. I said, oh shit. So he sent us a picture. I ran over there. Fortunately, it didn't flood the lower level of the house. The break was just outside of the foundation towards the front yard, but it was bubbling up and spewing all over the front patio area in the front yard. Water was running all the way down the driveway and down the street. It looked like a giant water main broke, but we dug it up this morning, and old galvanized line just corroded and busted, and that's what happens when you don't fix galvanized lines. Sometimes that's that happens. But in this case, it was a water line that supplied to the house. We hadn't dug it up; it worked fine, so we didn't figure it needed to be replaced. But now it does. So we're digging up the yard today, and we're replacing a water line. But that was a great way to start off a Saturday. Other than that, the biggest thing I can tell you is that our Dunthorpe house, we're having the final push. It's probably about a month away from completion. And the final push, for any of you guys know, is always the most difficult one. Getting that last 10 or 15% of any project done is always the most difficult, especially on a 5,300 square foot house. There's no question. So I was up there this morning. There's subs everywhere. Tempers are flaring. People are pissed. A lot of these guys have a hard time getting along with each other. They get pissed off about the stupidest stuff like parking spaces and things like that. So I was up there playing counselor this morning and getting everybody to chill out a little bit. But cool story about that real quick is that we've got some really cool pendant lights in the kitchen. They're Kelly Wessler lights that are just, they're sold out everywhere. They're on back order everywhere. And I reached out directly to the lighting manufacturer, which is Circle Lighting. And I said, hey, check out the renderings of this kitchen. These pendants are going to be the centerpiece of our entire main floor. Is there anything you can do to get us these ahead of time? Because they're on back order and nobody knows when they're going to have more of them that are made. and shipped here. And so they said, let us see what we can do. And they magically made 3 appear. They pulled them out of a showroom somewhere across the country, and or one from one showroom, another from another, and we got the color that we wanted, and we got 3 of them. And they actually shipped them to us and everything. So we got these amazing pendants, and they will be the centerpiece of our kitchen. So pretty cool. So shout out to Circle Lighting for helping us out and helping make sure that this house really, makes the impact that we want it to make on all levels. So anyway, we're having a reveal party in October. If you guys are local, you want to come to the reveal party, make sure you reach out to me, and I'll let you know the details on that. But we're going to have a big bash to show off what is, probably one of the most expensive houses in the Portland metro area, if not in all of Oregon, that hopefully sells this year. So keep an eye and an ear out for that. Other than that, that's all I got for you. So without further ado, let's get into the show. Let's talk with Mike and Tyler from RareBird, and let's hear what they got going on. All right, Real Dealz podcast listeners, I want to talk quickly about our show's sponsor, Iron Bridge Lending. If you guys have not reached out to Iron Bridge already to talk to them about funding some of your upcoming flip projects, I highly encourage you to do so. I've known the owner of Iron Bridge for a very long time. I've personally borrowed millions of dollars from them over the years to do a number of different projects, and I can say without a doubt, they are the best hard money lending company I have ever come across, and that is the reason why they are the sole sponsor of this show. I've had a lot of other companies reach out to me and want to sponsor this show, but I just won't do it. I feel like I need to be genuine in who we have sponsoring the show, and it needs to be somebody that I've personally done a ton of business with. So I personally vouch for their ability to be the best, hands down, in the world of hard money lending. You won't find better programs, you won't find better terms, and they're lending or will be lending in over 20 states. So chances are, if you're hearing this in whatever state you're in, it's definitely worth it to check out their website, reach out to them, see if they're lending in your state, and if they are, I would absolutely encourage you to do business with them. Another very cool thing to note is that they have a program for most rehabs where you can actually borrow up to 90% of the purchase price. Now, this is given the fact that you are actually buying a deal, which if you're listening to the show, that means you probably are. But if you have an actual deal on the table, they'll fund up to 90% of your purchase price, and they'll even give you rehab funds on top of that, which means that it only takes 10% down to get into a project, which is unbelievable in the hard money world. So do yourself a favor, reach out to Iron Bridge Lending, have a conversation with them, see if they're a good fit for you and for your next project. I can guarantee you that you'll be happy that you did. All right, everybody out there in listener land, I've got a couple of special guests for you guys this week. It's a couple individuals that I've known or known about, I should say, for a while. I maybe known through people or known of. Portland is it's a big, small city, so you can know of people and not really know them personally, but I now do know them both personally, and I wanted to bring them on the show because, as I mentioned in previous episodes, Portland has a very challenging, it's had a very challenging meetup scene. Hasn't been great, which is why I haven't been a big participant in a lot of it, with the exception of these guys who have built what is, without argument, the best meetup in the Portland area, and it's been really cool to see what they've done. And so I first heard about them back in 2014, 2015 when they first started it. I don't want to steal their thunder. I'll let them get into it. But they've done a lot of really cool things. I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say, hey, do you know these guys? And I said, yeah, I know them or of them, and they seem like they're doing something really cool. And everybody on the other end of that has said, yeah, they seem like great guys. It's a great meetup. And so I approached them and I said, hey, let's do a show together. Let's talk about what you got going on, and then we can also talk about what we're going to do together. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Mike and Tyler from RareBird.
Thanks, Tucker.
Thank you.
So let's talk, first of all, we'll get into RareBird here in a second, but obviously, Mike, I've known you for a little longer. Tyler, we met at the Pacific Northwest Big Badass Real Estate Expo that Taro put on, at least in person anyway. Maybe, go one by one, give everybody a little breakdown of kind of how you got into this crazy investor world, right? Of interesting characters and giant profits and occasionally a loss or two, right? And good stories. Maybe give everybody a breakdown of how you got into this world, when you got into this world, because I know you guys are seasoned vets like myself, and it'd be interesting to hear.
Yeah, so I'll start. This is Mike. I kind of backdoored into real estate investment through real estate appraisals. So when I was graduating high school, my senior year of high school, I had an opportunity to get into the appraisal industry, and that's how I started. So that was 1997. I bought my first house in 2003 through a short sale, and then house hacked that. Didn't know what a short sale was, didn't know what house hacking was, but just that was my foray into investing. And then bought a couple other rental properties pre-crash, and then learned some bigger lessons throughout the recession and the market crash. And then in 2009, with the passing of Dodd-Frank, essentially my income as an appraiser evaporated. So that was just a natural lead into, hey, I always wanted to be a real estate investor, a developer, full-time owning property rather than appraising property. So it was just the perfect time to kind of make that segue. And so late 2009, that's when I took some classes. I bought one of those education packages from a big guru that didn't teach me anything, but still a good action move because it led me into a new career where then as an appraiser getting into the real estate investment world, it's just like you said, it's a completely different ballgame, different terms, different tools, different way of looking at markets. So it was a huge learning curve, 2009, 2010. I met Tyler in 2010. We partnered in 2011. And then really when we partnered up, that's where success started taking off, and we just grew from there incrementally. So that's how I got into it.
Very cool.
Tyler, jumped into it without any education, not knowing what I was doing, very foolhardy. And within my first 3 flips, ran into serious trouble. So I actually met Mike trying to offload one of my lemon deals to somebody that would take it off my hands. And he was smart enough not to take it, but we started working together kind of after meeting on that deal.
What was the lemon deal? I'm curious. Like, was it, did you overpay for it? What was it, too much work? What was it?
No, I didn't underpay for it. I didn't know what due diligence I needed to do. So I bought it. It was in a floodplain, and it had a illegally, unpermitted basement in a floodplain. So I ran into a 3-year legal battle with the city of Portland over how to resolve that issue.
Gotcha. And did you ever get it resolved, or was that one that you had to kind of take it in the teeth at some point?
Both. I got it resolved and had to take a loss. But perseverance and being nice to the people of the city of Portland really paid off. And eventually we found a resolution. Short story, just going into the FEMA flood maps and aerial photographs and kind of documenting when the basement was created. I was able to get through the permitting process.
Very cool. I only asked because we took a loss on one earlier this year, and they're never fun.
No, it hurts.
Yeah, outside factors that we couldn't control, like a giant apartment building getting built right behind your backyard that previously wasn't.
Yes.
Yeah. So when it goes from church to giant apartment building, it changes your valuation by quite a bit. So
yeah. And that can cause PTSD. Like, I don't even want to drive through that neighborhood looking at deals anymore.
It's funny. We have some houses we've sold to people that were just a complete pain in the ass, and I get PTSD when I go in those areas because they've ruined them for me just because I don't want to ever deal with those people again. But back on track. So you guys met in 2010, 2011. How did that progression then turn into RareBird, or what did that process look like? Was it an idea that one of you had? When did that come together, and what did it look like?
Yeah, incremental steps is really what it was. So when we first met, we were just flippers, so flippers, we do a little bit of land development. But essentially that's what we were. We were just buying single family homes, fixing it up and selling them. Then we started learning more tools, learning some creative financing, some seller financing, started building a rental portfolio. Our flipping business was picking up, so it just made sense for Tyler to get his broker's license. To keep that, some cost in-house. I think it was 2014, we had a decent sized portfolio built up, and Tyler decided to fire our property manager. So then I went and got a property management license, and that's how our property management division started. 2017, we bought our current office building in 2015, moved into it in 2017. So that was the right time to then start our own brokerage. Previously, we had a team at a bigger brokerage. Didn't want their name on our sign in front of our buildings, so that was the time to open our brokerage.
So that's cool. You guys actually own that building then. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was an intentional effort as well. So we started looking for a kind of a world headquarters in 2013. Didn't really find the right building until 2015. We wanted something in a high demand area, and then also multiple streams of income. We didn't want to be our own income stream for that, so we were able to buy the buildings around us as well. But yeah, 2014 is when we branded. So we were just a development company with a no-nonsense name, and 2014 is when we actually came up with the name RareBird and started branding these other divisions, and that's when we officially started our meetup, was with that branding process.
Gotcha. And how many units besides the buildings had you guys accumulated at that point? Because you started buying, now looking backwards, at a pretty good time. At that point in time, you were probably just like, well, let's start building this portfolio. Now it probably looks pretty favorable based on what you probably bought a lot of that for. But did you start picking that stuff up post real estate crash then?
Yeah. I think we bought a triplex together. I think we started negotiations in late 2011, closed 2012, picked up a commercial building after that. Picked up the duplex, sold the triplex, bought another triplex, bought a fourplex, and then just, property sizes, property values started getting bigger. So now we've got an 85 unit portfolio, all located in the Portland area. And
you do all the management yourself, right?
Yeah, all management's in-house. And that's really the structure of our property management company, is to be our own biggest client. I don't think we ever want to get to the point where we have more client units than we do our own portfolio units. We want to be able to kind of control the mindset of that property management company, not the other way around.
I was kind of joking. I was thinking maybe Tyler made you take all the tenant calls and deal with all of that. But
yeah, at first
exactly what happened.
Yeah, at first I was their leasing agent. I was our property manager. I was our tenant communications. It was a load. So, but I also wouldn't want to do it any other way. That's, you learn the fundamentals, you kind of learn the way you want to do it, and then that helps you create sort of a training program for then, our staff that now run it. For sure. Yeah. I did the leasing on all of the rental property that I have for years until I finally broke down and paid the 8% to have somebody else do it eventually. But
and even now when we run our pro formas on buying a property, we factor in the 8%, and our property management company charges us the same rate as we charge our clients, so that if we ever do want to move a property to a different property manager, or we want to shut down our property management company, we want our portfolio to be able to pencil and afford a property manager at a going rate.
For sure, which is a smart thing to do. Absolutely. So then you guys are building this portfolio. You elect to, buy a building, start a brokerage, which, turns into, the headquarters for eventual world domination, right? But it's got to have a starting point, which is that building. When did the meetup then start to come together? Yeah, we started doing meetings for our local RIA in 2012, but the first meeting under our brand was June 2014. Okay. So you guys were doing basically helping run meetings for the RIA then locally? Was that? Your sound's good, so it's fine. Okay. Don't worry about it. Yeah. So you started running. I just said, were you working with the guy that he'll remain nameless at this point? Doesn't really matter. But the guy that was running the local RIA previous to that then, and you guys were just kind of helping facilitate some of the meetings?
We ran a breakout group for them.
Okay.
So we weren't facilitating the general meetings. We were doing our own we were leading a self-run meeting for them that was essentially started as Mike was really into still trying to juggle his appraisal business as a licensed appraiser. So we started doing these classes about the vocabulary, the glossary of appraisal terms, and helping people learn how to value their properties and kind of look at it through a different lens. And that kind of went from there to a lot of nuts and bolts classes on how to just kind of sharing as we were learning how to do it, kind of just sharing what we were learning with everyone else. And it fostered a kind of a unique, collaborative, open environment that eventually we wanted to kind of protect that. And so we kind of created our own thing out of that initial group. And now it's
it's a pretty special group of people because they're all actively investing or wanting to learn how to actively invest and are willing to share their secrets. So there's not there's not one specific level of expertise. You have brand new people and veterans, and people are taking each other out to lunch, swapping deals. A lot of trading goes back and forth,
which is really cool. So that first meeting then in 2014, how many people were at that one? I mean, comparatively to now, has it grown a lot? Or
yeah, I think our first meeting was in the basement of some bar, and Mike and I were standing in between pinball machines that were still plugged in, and we were fighting against the noise. So I'm guessing there was like 12 to 20 people at that first meeting. So it was a pretty raw and real circumstance at the beginning.
Yeah. We quickly grew it to about 50 on a regular basis. That took, so we jumped from space to space to space. So we went through 3 venues in probably 4 or 5 months before we settled on a venue that could hold 90 for 6 years. I think we were there for about 6 years until now we're in a venue that could hold 200 plus.
Yeah, because I remember us talking, and you guys are consistently putting up much closer to the top end numbers there now as far as people that show up, which is a long departure from the humble beginnings of 12 people in a pinball machine downstairs.
Yeah, exactly.
It's nothing like having hipsters drinking beer in the background going, what are these guys doing?
What are they doing? These evil capitalists, what are they talking about?
Yes, yes.
So today, what does the RareBird, what are the meetings look like? What have they grown into? Who comes to them? Maybe give us a breakdown of, for those people that are interested, what they're kind of about now, how they're structured. What does all that look like?
Yeah, our investor network is, like I said, all shapes and sizes of investors, but most people are really seriously looking at actively making a move, or are, full-time career investors, or realtors or mortgage brokers that work with a lot of investors. We have a fair amount of service providers that are actively engaged in our group that are, you see the same attorneys working with a lot of our investors to create, the legal docs required to buy and sell properties. You see a lot of the same realtors working with a lot of our same members. So it's a pretty tight-knit group, but, there's not a territorialism in our group. So plenty of mortgage brokers that, kind of swap clients and kind of share best practices, and same with realtors and attorneys as well. And so our meeting format is usually, we do a market update that Mike usually heads up, that kind of talks specifically about what's going on in Portland and on the state level, as well as kind of a macroeconomic update as well. And then we usually bring in some sort of expert. They're either a local person or someone, usually one of our friends that we cajole into coming into Portland to share kind of the background of what they're up to in their market and kind of give a different perspective.
Very cool. So now we're looking at, like, I don't know, I think you guys told me somewhere around 150 or so, depending on the meeting, of people that show up that are kind of a combination of, full-timers, part-timers, and then, of course, you got some, service providers as well.
Yep.
Very cool. And it's once a month, or how, I guess, what's kind of the structure on those meetings as far as timing?
We do it the second Thursday of the month at 6:30, and then it usually goes till around 9, and then there's networking before and after, because that's really the purpose of it, is the collaboration, the exchange of ideas and business cards and deals is the primary motive that most people come to the group, and so we want to try to limit the educational part to not take up the whole time.
Very cool. Yeah, I remember back, I think it was 2010. I spoke at the RIA, and the quality of your guys' group is far superior to what our RIA was back in 2010. But there was a lot of very interesting characters, and I remember being there with Chris, and I looked at him and was like, "We got to get the hell out of here," because we had a lot of vampire time succubuses and a lot of people that were not actively engaged in the business, but had a whole lot of questions, and we were like, "We got to peel off, folks. We got to get out of here." But fortunately, it sounds like you guys took what was a much lesser quality meetup overall and have quite a few people in it that are full-time people that probably really help a lot of the newer people that are on the front end, but just really bring up the quality of the meetup overall.
Yeah, and something we implemented recently was this kind of, it sounds silly, but a sticker system with different colors for what people are looking for, because it's hard when you walk into a room of 100 people or so, and you're looking, say you have a great deal, it's a great deal, but you just can't find an equity partner. So we have a sticker system on the name tag, so you can find someone that's got money that's looking for a deal, or you can find someone that's a realtor that provides investment properties to investors. We have a way to help people connect with the resource they're looking for quickly without having to go through a bunch of conversations that are dead ends before they find what they're hoping to find.
Very cool. So I just, I wanted to kind of explore that a little bit just so that people understand, that it's not just a beginners, tire kicker group. There's actually a lot of people that are, movers and shakers that are doing things in there. But on the other side of it too, you guys aren't just in the meetup education space. You've kind of, you've got a portfolio of your own, you've got a real business of your own. And I wanted to kind of dive into that a little more. So maybe you've got RareBird, right? You've got the meetup portion of it. We've talked about the property management portion of it. What else does that entail for those people that are listening that may have heard the name or may not have?
Yeah, so we have an acquisition company. So the acquisitions company, RareBird Acquisitions, we focus on short-term developments and long-term holds. We're buying anywhere from 10 to 15 properties a year is typically what we've been buying. And then half of those we'll throw them into LLCs in various formats. And that's how we build our rental portfolio. And then half of them we'll flip. Typically, we're keeping the multifamily, selling the single family. We do a little bit of land development, one new build a year. So we always kind of have a couple different activities going on the acquisition side. Usually about four to six projects going at one time. So nothing that's too serious, nothing that's too difficult to keep up with, but enough to keep that pipeline filled. And then we have the brokerage. I'll let Tyler talk about the brokerage.
Our brokerage is definitely entrepreneurial focused and like investor focused. So we're a good fit for brokers that are looking to build their own portfolios and also build their real estate business, but people that are wanting to fully actively engage in learning how to evaluate properties, whether it's for themselves or their clients, how to do some creative negotiation, some out of the box transactions. We started the brokerage kind of out of a necessity because we weren't always allowed to do the kind of crazy creative things we wanted to do, even though they were, legal and ethical, just because they weren't, understood or there was some additional liability attached to them. So we have a group of brokers that feel at home, that they can kind of do their thing, whatever their investment strategy is, and have the support of a community of like-minded investors. We have a pretty high standard of, an additional layer of like an ethical commitment we ask them to make because of the extra liability. And then we have a pretty high involvement in helping them structure their deals so that everything's done legally and ethically. But having a group of kind of cowboys and cowgirls that kind of treat the real estate industry as the Wild West is the only way I would ever want to run a brokerage, because it's so much fun.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear that, just because I wanted to bring it up because brokerages have kind of their own culture in a lot of senses. And so you've got a lot of them out there that are very just retail focused, right? I'd say most all, right? They're very retail focused, but it sounds like you guys have kind of carved out a niche with the brokerage that, allows people that have some interest to a lot of interest in the investment side of the business to come in, maybe further their education. Heck, maybe they could even go up to your meetup group, right? I'm sure a lot of them do, and just kind of learn a little bit more about that part of the business. And that, but that leads me into my next question, which is for the acquisition side, Mike. Do you guys leverage the brokerage as lead flow for your acquisitions, or do you guys do other stuff to kind of generate that lead flow for then you to sift and sort and decide what it is that you guys want to take on, whether it be to turn and burn or whether it be to add to the portfolio every year?
Yeah, we do both. So on the brokerage side, specifically in the contracts that our brokers sign, there's an incentive clause in there. So if they bring us a deal that our acquisition company purchases, then they get reimbursed for their year's worth of desk fees. So essentially, if you bring us a deal once a year, you can work at our brokerage for free. So we incentivize them to collaborate with us. And then on the other acquisition side, so we get repeat sellers now. We're different. We don't go after motivated sellers. We work more with unmotivated, sophisticated sellers that own multiple properties. And so that's where we're able to do a lot of seller finance deals because it makes sense for those sophisticated sellers. And then we get repeat business from them. So every year we buy at least 1 or 2 properties as repeat properties from sellers that we've worked with. We've actually, one seller this year we're buying 4 from. And then we have direct mail, right? So the direct mail goes out and that brings us a few deals every single year. And then we'll get 1 or 2 pocket listings a year and maybe a wholesale deal or some referrals that come to us. So a little bit of direct mail, but most of it is now just that snowball that we've created is now kicking off leads that we get to go after without a lot of effort.
Yeah, which
I would
is
say,
nice.
Yeah.
I'd add that on the flow with the investment properties, it's also a great outlet to be able to place properties that don't fit our business model with our, either friends from the investor network or or clients of ours on the brokerage side. So, or even other brokers. So in the last few months, we've sold quite a few properties to other brokers that are trying to build their portfolios. And for whatever reason, the properties didn't match our criteria. So it's great to have kind of an overflow valve that we can still make use of really good deals, leave a bunch of skin on the bone, and give them to other investors.
Very cool. Real quick, Mike, just for my own kind of information, and I'm sure a lot of people listening as well, when you're buying from these people that are more sophisticated, let's call them repeat sellers, and you're doing seller financing with them, what are they trying to accomplish? Some tax minimization, or are they just looking to basically kind of get over the real estate investor hump and essentially be just a kind of a note investor at that point and just get passive income and not have to manage the properties themselves?
Yeah. So essentially the profile is typically an older demographic. They've held properties for 20, 30 years. They've got a ton of appreciation. They're looking at, a huge 6-figure tax hit if they do sell all cash. They don't want a 1031 exchange because they don't want to manage real estate anymore. They typically don't need the cash, or they don't need much more than a small down payment can handle. And they're addicted to cash flow. I think that's really the part of it is. And when you get to that part of your career, I think, you do it, we do it, we give back, right? So you're giving back to people that are coming up, throwing a rope down, so to speak. So part of it is it's an extension of their legacy, being able to, I've had a lot of conversations with owners of just exactly that, which is you've created this legacy and now we're taking that baton and moving it forward. Typically in a similar fashion, we will improve their property, make it nicer, improve that income stream. That's where we'll profit from. But yeah, it starts with capital gains and cash flow and then goes from there.
And that legacy piece really comes into play when the intention is to hold it. When it's a flip property, it's harder to have that conversation authentically. But when you're holding the property, you plan on keeping the tenants in place. That's where those really fun conversations about legacy can take place. Yeah,
we're buying a sober house right now. There's 9 tenants in there, and that's the whole thing with the seller with us or his desire is I want the tenants to stay. I want to sell to someone who's going to allow this business model to live out. And so we do that on quite a few projects we buy.
Now, being that I know you guys are both saints, but I also know that the sober model, it's an interesting model and one that's very profitable if done right, from what I've heard as well, because you're renting out rooms at a much higher rate than you would a house overall. It's kind of like assisted care, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to an extent. And it's something we don't have a lot of experience in. We have friends with a lot of experience. Tyler's on the Unit Gospel Mission Board, so he's got some knowledge with that area as well. But yeah, you're renting by the room. And when you're renting by the room, it can improve the overall income stream for the property. So it's great for the property owner, but when you're renting by room, it's also affordable housing. So these people are able to, function by themselves, be back out in society and pay $500 a month in rent, which is unheard of in our market. You're dealing with personalities, you're dealing with a lot more turnover. Obviously, they're much more difficult on the property. So the format of what we're buying, there's kind of a caretaker there who gets discounted rent. They mow the lawn, they make sure there's no real issues going on, and then they're painting the bedrooms in between turns and stuff like that. So you want to have someone on site that kind of manages that. But it's something that we'll get a lot more knowledge on here in the short term.
Yeah, I think there's two different models. There's one that you're really trying to maximize with an above market rent. And you're being able to get subsidized rent from recovery programs and other kind of NGOs or nonprofits. And then there's and there's some hoops you have to jump through to hit that kind of revenue. And then there's other recovery programs that are much more kind of community policed at affordable rates for people trying to get back on their feet, both in terms of recovery and in terms of just affordable housing. And so it depends on which model you're going to chase after as far as how much revenue premium you're going to get.
Yeah, it's an interesting model to me because, I know a fair bit of people that are in the assisted care world, and I don't know, that world just seems so morbid to me that I've never wanted to go there. But, on the sober house side, you're actually doing something good. Generally, these are younger people. You're trying to re-release them into the wild, we'll say, without any sort of addiction, and to be a positive, constructive member of society moving forward. But at the same time, you can make it pencil a hell of a lot better than your traditional rentals, almost like an Airbnb, right? Which has a lot of, we'll say, supporters and a lot of naysayers about it, depending on where you live, right? And I'm sure sober houses are the same way. But it's an interesting model nonetheless. That's why I wanted to dive into it a little bit. But it sounds like within the next year, you guys will probably be experts in that. And if people want to go to the meetups, they could pick your brain about it.
We'll do a topic on it for sure.
We'll probably have made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, don't we all? So, all right. So I want to talk about here in just a second what we've got coming up in October, which is a really cool event that hopefully everybody that's listening to this comes out to. But before we get into that, I want to talk about best and worst deals. I know that, Tyler, you had mentioned that you had a lemon in a floodplain. I'm sure you guys have had something that maybe is a little more entertaining than that's happened over the course of your career. But maybe collectively, as you guys being partners, what's the best deal you guys have done? What's the worst deal you guys have done? And worse could just be a factor of just things happening, right? It does not necessarily a bad choice on your part, but I know I've got a best deal and I know for sure I got a worst deal. So I'm curious what your guys' are.
I'd say our worst deal is probably a couple of luxury homes we tried to build out in Oregon City, as far as in kind of the last several years, where we just went way over budget. We are not luxury home builders. We are infill developers. So we're doing luxury homes on acreage just so far out of our wheelhouse. And it just really taught us, stick to what you know, stick to your business model, and just know a lot of people so that when those great opportunities come along that don't fit your business model, give them to your friends that it fits that it fits their business model, because then you can still benefit from it in some way and help your network out. But every time we try to step outside of our wheelhouse in a significant way to chase an opportunity, we usually regret it.
I think that's a good point, because a lot of people just think real estate investing, and it's like, I've got a deal I'm looking at, and it's like, what category of real estate is it in? What are you trying to accomplish? And, we can't all do everything, right?
Exactly.
as much as we want to.
Now, I'm guessing your best deal is probably in your wheelhouse, and it's something you guys look for often. But I'm going to put you on the spot, or maybe better. Doesn't have to be best, but
Right.
Your better
That's
deal.
not a question we get asked very often about the best deal.
I still, I think best deal for, I'd say the Tualatin triplex. We've had a lot of good deals, to be honest. I think, I go to this. God, that sounded really conceited.
It just means you're active in
We're blessed.
Yeah.
We're blessed.
Yeah, we're blessed. We bought a triplex. The first triplex that we bought together, is a deal we got in for $2,000 down. Started higher than that, but it was dilapidated property. So we worked out a deal with the seller to reduce our down payment to just what the earnest money was. And then we'd invested in the property over the short period of time. Bought it at the right time in the market. But then when we went to sell it, we sold it for significant profit. But this was the first time going back to our seller and saying, hey, we've got 11-year financing with you. We're going to cash you out in year 11 or year 3. We don't want to cash you out. You don't want to be cashed out. We have a solution to this. We have this other property we want to purchase. And would you be interested in keeping your money and play with us? So that was the first time we substituted a collateral or we walked the mortgage to another property. And once you start understanding that level of sophistication on finance, your whole world, your mindset changes around acquisitions and raising capital. And so that's when we really learned how important it is to turn our sellers into lenders. And so when you're, from an acquisition standpoint, building your capital pool, that's where you can really get some exponential growth. So I point to that deal because of what it did to jumping off our career into another direction.
And our cost to enter that deal was so ridiculously low. There was some deferred maintenance on it. So initially we put $1,000 of earnest money in, and then we were supposed to close with $10,000 of a down payment and the rest on seller financing. But when we discovered some of the deferred maintenance, which wasn't that crazy, but it was significant, especially for where we were at the time. We were able to negotiate essentially a maintenance plan in lieu of a down payment. So we were able to buy the property for just the $1,000 of original earnest money we put in. So I think that's another reason why, if you evaluate a success of a deal as far as return on capital, it was a pretty darn good project.
Yeah, the substitution of collateral thing. There's a fella that I know well named Mike Sumsky that's up in the Seattle area. He does that really, really well. So it's interesting you brought that up. But I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that go, that's something I got to dig into more. But you're right. It opens up your capital pool. It just kind of opens your eyes. You're like, oh, I guess we can do that, right? So that's pretty cool. Well, I'm glad I asked the question, right? We rabbit holed there. So.
Yeah.
All right, so without putting you guys on the spot any further, let's talk about what you guys have coming up for RareBird and the meetups, both for this month, being September, and then also as we head into October, for those people that want to come out and, meet you guys, and ultimately in October, meet me as well.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
Why don't you talk about September? I'll talk about October.
That's where I was going, Tyler. So thanks for the opportunity to talk about that. So in September, so we bring in guest speakers that are known as experts in the market. And so we're bringing in Patrick Berry, who's like the apartment appraiser guru in town. They do a lot of presentations for various groups, landlord groups, title companies. And when I'm doing my market updates, when I'm doing, I do a yearly forecast, I'm looking to him and the data, the reports that he provides to really understand what's going on in the multifamily world. So they're a highly looked after kind of expert in our marketplace from a apartment market standpoint. So Patrick will come do the main presentation in September. I'll do the market update like we always do, and then there'll be great networking there. And then I'll let Tyler talk about the amazing speaker we have coming in October.
I hear he's pretty good, but
oh my gosh,
yeah.
I don't know how we landed him, but our very own Tucker Merrihew is going to be talking about the shenanigans he's been up to with the kind of some of your deals and kind of the actually it's weird to talk to you about what you're going to be talking about, but based on what we
pretend I'm
discussed,
third person, right?
Yeah. Tucker here is going to be talking about his own projects recently and kind of what he sees in the market, how he's finding his deals, how he's making the most out of them, and then we're actually going to be starting that meeting early at 5:30. It's our first vendor fair, so we're trusted local service providers, other members of our group. We're going to have a bunch of booths set up, and we've hand selected these service providers as just people that will actually deliver value to the investors that are in our investor network. So that's going to be from 5:30 to 6:30, and then Tucker, you're going to get up and start talking at 6:30. So that October is going to be pretty different than our normal meetings, but we're excited to get a little additional networking time and to tour the booths.
I think I start juggling fire at 7:45 on stage.
Right.
So yeah, it should be fun. So and then that's October 10th, right? For everybody that's listening.
Yep, October 10th. And then I think one other event, September 19th.
24th.
September 19th, we are having Jay Heinrichs, who's kind of does local and national stuff, come and talk about the stuff that he's been doing in out-of-state investing and share some of his horror stories. So that'll be fun. That'll be at our office.
So yeah, he's a good guy to have for sure.
Yeah.
So for those people that obviously are listening that are local, they should come out for sure to as many of those as they can, but absolutely come out for October if they've, got stuff going on next week. And then, if they don't have anything going on later in the month here in September, we'll post all of those dates on the show notes page, and also that goes out with the email on the show so that everybody can kind of get a handle on that and put it on their calendar. But for those people that are listening, what's the best way for them to kind of keep tabs on all of this, kind of get into your guys' universe so that they can kind of follow along and, basically be up to speed on when all these events are so that they can start coming to them or at least know when they're at or where they're at and when they're going on?
Well, the most accurate information is always on rarebirdinvestors.com. And then we also have our social media pages on Instagram and Facebook. But rarebirdinvestors.com is the easiest way to find us.
Very cool. So I would suggest everybody go there, check it out. We've got a big, me juggling fire, and then of course talking a little bit about real estate in the interim on October 10th. Now it'll be fun. I'm excited. We're going to get up. The reason why I was asking you guys a lot about kind of how you're generating a lot of your deals is I wanted to figure out kind of where the gaps are in terms of, what hasn't been talked about quite as much maybe by the guys that run RareBird. And so I'm going to talk a lot about all of the direct to seller stuff that we do because, we don't have as much of a referral network as you guys do as far as delivering deals or reoccurring sellers. We do a lot of buy, sell versus buy portfolio. And so we've got to find a lot of those people that, are one-time sellers for us, essentially. Mm-hmm. And so we have to do a lot of different marketing to do that. We are mainly direct mail based, but we do a lot of other stuff too on top of it. So we're going to go into, I'll kind of pull back the curtain and let everybody see what we're doing. Hopefully not too many people copy what we're doing locally, but I've come to conclude that you can show 100 people what you do and 99 of them aren't going to do it anyway. So hopefully everybody's at least entertained by it and they understand how it all works. And hopefully if they're motivated enough, they'll take action and they can get some of the same results. But that'll be on October 10th. I guess before we go, I just want to thank you guys for coming on here and doing this. And of course, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to your guys' group. And like I said in the meeting when we had lunch, anything that I can do moving forward to kind of bring more attention to the RareBird meetups and just get more people there. I think our scene here could, not that you guys need any help by any means because you're doing a great job, but I feel like we need to kind of put you guys on a pedestal as being the best meetup that we've got and that we're going to have moving forward. And so anything I can do to help that, obviously I'm here to do it.
We appreciate that. And the more people that participate in that community, the better it is, right? So the more resources that we can collectively provide, the more leverage the whole group has. So we're all about the more the merrier and trying to share as many resources and as many hot tips as possible because there's plenty of deals to go around.
That there is. All right, Mike, any final words of wisdom for our substitution of collateral listeners?
Oh man, yeah, go talk to as many free and clear property owners as possible. That's where it's at.
There you go. All right, guys. Well, I will be there on October 10th. Refer to their website, which will have a link in the show notes page if you guys want to see all the other events that they have going on. But like I said, these guys put on great events, and I've got nothing but great things to say about them, and so does everybody else that's ever been to an event. So go check them out, and thanks again, guys, for joining me on the show.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Tucker.
All right, guys, that was this week's show with Mike and Tyler of RareBird. A couple of great guys. They've got a great organization, a really impressive business. I mean, they've built a hell of a portfolio, and they own the building that they're in. They've just done a lot of really impressive stuff. So not only are they in the meetup, somewhat education space, but they practice what they preach, and they do it every single day. And they've built, a sizable real estate portfolio, just doing what they say they do. So there you go, right? Hopefully you guys enjoyed the interview. They're solid guys, and like we said in the interview, October 10th is the event day that I'll be speaking at their big vendor fair, which is their biggest event of the year here in Portland, and it should be a great time. So if any of you guys are local or you're nearby, you want to come to the event, I'd love to see you guys. I'll be there, flapping my gums for a while. I'll be there ahead of time. I'll be there after, and come by, say hi. We can shake hands, talk shop, and hopefully you guys get something great out of the event. So that is all I got for you on that front. Now, before I leave you this week, I've got a closing success quote, and this week's quote is a good one that I found. It's by Ralph Martson, we'll say. We'll call it Ralph. I don't know. Well, you guys probably know who he is. I don't know that I've heard of him, or at least that I'm that familiar with him, but, he's probably a pretty familiar guy. Anyway, the quote is the important part, and that is, success requires both urgency and patience. Be urgent about making the effort and patient about seeing the results. I like that quote because we are in a absolutely instant gratification society these days, and even more so, I think, on the real estate investor front when people start doing marketing or whatever. If they don't get their $100,000 flip deal out of the gate, they're just like, oh, this doesn't work, right? Well, patience. Trust the process, right? Patience is an important thing, and be urgent about taking action. So anyway, follow that little guide there, and you'll definitely achieve success. That's what we do every day. So, all right, guys, this wraps up episode 280. I'll see you all next week.